And I should say as well, dear listener, if you have a question or a point that you'd like to put to any of these candidates this morning, then do get in touch. The phone number 08000 85 95 96. To our first question, there's several, and it's all to do with the congestion charge.
Hello, my name's Harry. I've got a question for the candidates about the congestion charge. So while I'm not against the idea in principle, I'm a bit worried about the level that it's been set at. It seemed very high, the numbers I'd seen. As a resident close to the boundary of the proposed zone, if I want to use my car to go out of the zone, I'm still going to get charged, just for moving, a few metres within the zone, not even going to the town centre. So I'd be interested to know any candidates' response to that issue and how they could make the experience of it better for people living in this area of Cambridge.
I'm Susie from Cherry Hinton. The question I have for the candidates is where exactly do they stand on the congestion charge? It's not good enough to say you don't approve of it as it stands. We want to know what you would approve.
I'm Fred, and my questions for the candidates are how they intend to obtain a way of stopping the congestion charge.
Well, I think Susie posed the most difficult question you might get all morning, actually, about the congestion charge. It's not good enough to say you don't approve of the congestion charge proposals as they stand. I want to know what you would approve of when it comes to a congestion charge. Well, let me turn to Alex Collis, the Labour candidate for King's Hedges, first of all. So, for or against a congestion charge for Cambridge?
So, broadly against for the aims of it. We know that air quality is an issue in Cambridge. I know there is, disagreement on, the level of air pollution in the city. So broadly supportive of the aims, but not supportive of the current proposals.
Okay, so not approving as it stands, but that's not good enough for Susie. So what would you approve?
No, and I understand exactly where Susie's coming from. I mean, we do have a considerable number of consultation responses which we have to listen to. What I would approve of, and I have, this opinion comes from talking to people in King's Hedges, lots of whom have to travel out of the city for work, lots of whom are on low incomes, would be significant resident exemptions, which is what was my first response to the scheme when it was first proposed as a ward councillor, and also much more attention paid to people on low incomes.
Okay, so when you first heard the proposals, you thought, hang on a minute, how come people living within the perimeter are being charged? That was your main concern.
Exactly.
So a significant reduction. So you'd welcome a congestion charge which was for people coming from outside of the city into the city?
In theory, but we have to listen to what people say. We've said we will listen to the consultation, and we will listen to the consultation. It's not just our decision as councillors. We're here to represent residents, and that's what we have to do.
And is that your personal view as a Labour candidate or the party, the Cambridge Party?
Both.
Councillor Tim Bick from the Lib Dems, where do you stand on the congestion charge?
Well, I feel a bit like your questioner, Harry, that you didn't pick his question out.
Well, we'll come to that. I won't forget Harry, don't worry.
But I don't disagree with this in principle, but I don't think the proposal is right yet. We wouldn't be supporting the plans that have currently been laid out, but this is a journey. We haven't reached a final point to it, and this kind of discussion, this election, and all of the debate that goes on around it is going to be formative in what eventually happens, if anything. I think that we need something. Doing nothing is really not an option, but what we do need to see are some changes to make this more flexible for residents. We need we are about creating choices with transport, so people having the choice of much better public transport, but we think that there are going to be unavoidable car journeys that people will always need to make, and we need to be realistic about that. And for that, people on low pay do need some accommodation so that the choice is a real one for them. And I also think we need to be sure up front that we've got a system which is going to make sure that the bus operators are really going to deliver and are going to be responsive to the needs that people have. Otherwise, they aren't going to be providing that choice for me.
Once again, I'm going to follow Susie's lead there. And so you're saying, in theory, you could support it, but not as it stands at the moment. So what would you support?
I've said something that is more flexible, that recognises the needs of the really, truly unavoidable car journeys that people will always need to
So
make.
greater exemptions. You're saying you wouldn't be opposed to a congestion charge with greater exemptions?
There are a number of ways of achieving this, and because this has to be agreed, if it is agreed eventually by a large number of different councils and political parties, my belief is that we could change this somewhat through the hours that it works. We could do this through having people having free days, and both of these kind of systems would give people the freedom to accomplish the journeys they really need. But the purpose of this is to encourage people to use the alternatives to the car as much as possible. And I don't shrink away from that. We just need to make sure that they're there for them.
Okay, Councillor Naomi Bennett for the Green Party. Where do you stand on the congestion charge?
At the moment, the Greens don't have any county seats. We're not on the GCP board. We don't get a vote any more than residents do. So what we've done is we've concentrated on what we think needs to be changed, which is why the Green Policy team has submitted an 11-page letter to GCP calling out for what we think needs to change about the charges. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole 11
Okay,
pages.
no, that's fine. Well, very simply then, would you support a congestion charge in any form, first of all, yes or no?
I'm a tax accountant in private life. I look on congestion charges as a tax. We do need to have taxes. I would only support a tax if it satisfied the principles of good taxation. At the moment, this charge doesn't because it's regressive, and that's why Councillor Matt Howard and I took a motion to the City Council talking for better exemptions on cost of living for residents, small businesses and commuters.
Okay, so once again, in theory, you would support congestion charge if it meant greater exemption for people on low incomes and for people who have unavoidable journeys?
No, it would need to be far more greater changes than that. And at the moment, I haven't seen a full economic assessment. I understand that GCP are going to do a new economic assessment for proposals once the consultation response is published in June, and that will be based on the changes that they're then proposing. And until I see that, I'm not going to say yes or no because it's irresponsible to do that. So once before you've seen the full financial workings.
Okay, Conservative candidate Mike Harford for West Chesterton. Are you happy to say whether you're for or against a congestion charge for Cambridge?
I'm very happy. We are totally against it, and we are the only party that say, with no ifs or buts, we say no. The whole
and why is that? Is it because it's maybe an easy election winner for you potentially, or a vote winner?
No. I think I'm not speaking very much as a Conservative. I just genuinely feel, as a resident of Cambridge, I feel I can represent them. And it's a totally unfair tax to the people who live in Cambridge, because people who live in Cambridge can't move their cars without paying a tax. People who come in from outside, they have a choice. Now, this is really a council tax more than a congestion charge, I feel. It's not about congestion. If it's about congestion, you'd let cars move when there isn't congestion. So that's not even on the table. In fact, if one person has one car and uses that car 5 days a week, which I would suggest is moderate, it would cost them £1,300 a year, which is almost having a 90% increase on their council tax. And that's what's focusing all the people of Cambridge in their minds now. That's why when I knock on a door, whatever party they voted for before, they say they're going to vote Conservative.
So if it's a flat no for a congestion charge from the Conservatives, how are you as a party going to resolve the situation where we've got poor air quality? We do have, huge queues for people trying to get in and out of the city, and we have public transport which is on its knees. So how would you resolve that without money generated from a congestion charge?
Well, yes, you can address that. But the whole focus on the plan at the moment is about buses. But there's other ways of reducing congestion and pollution.
So what are those ways?
And it could be well, actually, there's a pity that James Palmer's thing was shelved, where we're going to have
the metro with the tunnels underground.
That would have been great because that would have taken cars people off the road. They would come in by train, which is a much easier way of access, and would link in with the train services. But
Jeremy, could I just butt in about
Yeah, go on.
this? Because I went to see Mayor Palmer about this before I was elected, because I had huge concerns about the financing of the metro. Palmer was planning to strip all the Section 106 contributions from the new houses to fund this. And Section
106 provides sort of facilities for new communities,
That's right.
don't they?
So it's things like doctors, dentists, even, say, sports facilities and play areas.
Community centres.
So in order to achieve the dream that Mayor Palmer had, it would have meant sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. So these would be new communities, because he wasn't going to put them onto existing settlements. They couldn't have used the existing settlements, so they would have been deprived of any social facilities. And we all know what happens in communities where there's nothing, no meeting place.
I'll let Mike come back on this.
Can I just finish, because I hadn't quite finished at that point. And that is that if they decided, which they jolly well ought to, not to punish and imprison the residents of Cambridge, then that would be I believe about £95 million a year, and that would mean that the bus proposals wouldn't be able to go ahead, so the system could be scrapped anyway. And I also put the point that Labour and Liberal right now could stop it, because they've got representatives on the GCP executive board, and if they veto it, the whole thing's finished right now, and that might get them a few votes.
Well, let me put it back to Tim Bick for the Lib Dems then, first of all, and then to Alex Collis from the Labour Party.
Well, in one sense, what Mike says is right. But I think until my party and other parties that are involved in this believe that we are not going to get something positive out of this, why would this be stopped mid-flow? I think that one point that is completely neglected by Mike and his colleagues in this is that we have a sort of congestion charge now. And that congestion charge is in people's wasted time in traffic queues every morning, in terms of costly fuel that people are having to pay for in a period of a cost of living crisis. And the impact of this is on the environment, it's on businesses, and it's on people who never leave home and suffer social isolation. So we have a kind of congestion charge like that already. And what the quest is on now is, can we find something that works fairer than that, something that helps Cambridge to enjoy and share the prosperity that it can give, and help people gain access more freely to the city.
Well, I don't altogether disagree with everything you said there, but the big thing is, why can't people at least from Cambridge move when there isn't congestion? Why is electric vehicles not put aside in the original thing? And there's lots of questions, but basically the whole thing is flawed, and basically should go back to a clean piece of paper and start again and think of other ideas, like you can do smart ways of controlling the traffic. And there's lots of things that haven't even been discussed. It seems a very, very, very basic situation written off a fag packet.
Tim, I'll just very quickly let you come back to that.
Well, Mike says he's completely opposed to this, and then raises some ideas about things that could make it workable. So I don't really know where he stands. But of course, things like the hours of operation and a focus more on hours of congestion is one of the things that is in the debate. And I think that it's perfectly valid that should be explored, Mike, if you think the problem needs to be solved.
Let me put this point to Alex Collis from the Labour Party. You said you were concerned that people were being penalised for living within the perimeter and would have to pay just to leave their homes. Peter Blake, who's the Transport Director for the Greater Cambridge Partnership, has said, studies show that about 50% of the rush hour traffic is actually from residents within that cordon. And if you were to exempt them, then the system wouldn't pay for itself. So how would we get better public transport, more buses, without that income? How would you do that as a party?
I mean, that is one of the discussions we have to have. I think part of the problem with this debate at the moment is people don't understand how the decision is going to be made. It's complex layers of local government, and I think there's a lot of misconception, unfortunately fueled by some campaigners. We do, as a Labour Party, have representation on the GCP. Our representatives are mandated by our group of councillors, and our councillors are mandated by the residents who voted them in and by the responses to the consultation.
I just want to go back to that question that I put there. If you're removing 50% of the income from congestion charge, where are you going to get that money to fill that gap if you want better buses?
So as a party, we certainly believe in public franchising of bus services. They are not, the standards at the moment don't work for the city, and I understand why people don't have an awful lot of confidence in the bus service. I use the buses myself. I catch the bus in King's Hedges at the bottom of my road, and actually that's where I do quite a lot of my casework. When I meet people who are frustrated with the buses, we need a bus service that works for the city, and we believe as a party that public franchising has to be part of that, and will help deliver the improvements that people need to see.
Councillor Bennett for the Green Party, anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
Well, interestingly, the first 3 pages of my party's consultation response were about franchising. I think only Greater Manchester has franchising at the moment. My party sees it as a second best solution to renationalising key services, including public transport. That's not possible at the moment because it would require a change in national legislation to reverse what the Conservatives brought in. So it's not possible without a change of government. I actually wrote a textbook chapter on franchising, and it's not the universal panacea that everybody thinks it is. It's complex, it's clunky, it's unwieldy, it takes a long time to set up. But it's the least worst option we have at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Naomi Bennett there from the Greens. We have representatives from the 4 main parties after your vote in the forthcoming local elections at the start of next month here. Happy to answer your questions, take your point.